All right, so I'm here today with Evan Papadakis and THRLL. They're both filmmakers. Both of them I met recently. I met you both this month at Meme Analysis's, I guess the first event he's done here recently at Open the Portal, where I also read. That was at the top of this month in April. It feels like I've known you both for a lot longer than 4 weeks, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird
it was really this month, April.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, we just have such, close understandings of our interests.
Yeah.
So, of course, we feel like we know each other for a while.
Yeah. Kindred spirits.
Totally.
Yeah, no, we kind of bonded over shared interest in occult and esoteric stuff, I guess. Although we also all have an interest in film as well, but especially the esoteric stuff. And we went to that talk on sigils at the Philosophical Research Society a couple weeks back, and we're hanging out today in a field in an undisclosed location in Glendale.
Yes. It's very quiet, very secluded. We're going to talk about the real issues, the real topics out here in this field.
Yeah, we've secluded ourselves from the world to get into the real stuff. But
thanks for having me on your talk.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love doing these it's called field recording. I don't know if you guys have heard that, field recording podcast. This is definitely the first time I'm actually recording one in a field.
For real.
But no, I like doing them. They have a different vibe. They're always more meaningful than stuff that's just done over Zoom, I find.
I agree, especially the sound quality.
Well, the sound quality is worse, right?
Well, when you're listening to Zoom, it's like you're kind of getting this 8-bit kind of sound, but we're all getting the same fidelity here.
Yeah, we are all getting the same fidelity. I mean, I don't have the best field recording mic, but at the same time, I know what you mean. People tell you about vinyl sounding more warm. It's kind of a thing like that where it's you can just tell that it was recorded, but more of an actual conversation. And there's stuff I can do when I'm editing to kind of boost the sound a little bit. So hopefully we'll be coming through loud and clear. But anyway, so I introduced you both, Evan Papadakis, THRLL, both filmmakers. And Evan, you're also a writer of 2 Substacks, the Filmmaker Personae and Ethics in Film Production, which
yes.
A lot of, and I've enjoyed reading your Substack a lot, and I think that a lot of what we'll talk about today will kind of come from what you wrote about there, even stuff that you can kind of chime in on, THRLL, with regard to filmmaking, and specifically kind of coming at it from a different angle. I mean, how would you describe? Your Substacks are Filmmaker Personae and Ethics in Film Production. You have a somewhat, I guess, heterodox or somewhat forward-thinking take on the way films should be made or could be made, the way they could be made better, the way they could be made in line with certain esoteric principles. How would you unpack that? Your kind of mission with both your Substacks.
Right. So first of all, I appreciate you taking time to read it.
Yes.
I put a lot of work into that and thought, and when I discovered these kind of esoteric teachings, I just knew I really enjoyed learning about it and taking the time to dedicate myself to that work. And I thought, what better than to combine it with my other love, my main love, which is filmmaking. Yeah. And I'm a set lighting technician. Right. And that's all I do. I'll grip sometimes. Yeah. We can get into what that means, but...
Sure. No, I think it'll be interesting.
Being on set and doing set work and combining that with my Zoomer mindset of, not accepting the world as it currently is. Yeah. I was looking for new ways forward, so I decided to begin essentially writing textbooks. So the first being Ethics in Film Production. Yeah. And then the Filmmaker Persona, which I know will be, defining books, in this, Age of Aquarius, Aeon of Horus, the future. And so the Ethics in Film Production is literally just the application of ethical dilemmas in certain aspects of filmmaking. Yeah. So, for example, we'll use one that I wrote called The Environmental Stability of Film Production, in which I talk about the wastefulness that film productions have in regards to, for example, water distribution or trash. Yeah. So that's more of a ethics in film production topic. Yeah. But then, looking at the filmmaker persona, It's more the application of esotericism and occult ideas as well as Jungian analysis to filmmakers themselves, and how we can, as a person, approach filmmaking and things that we can identify in each other, which are inherently either, neurosis or good things that we should facilitate among, film employees or producers.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between the two.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the difference between the two bodies. Yeah. And they are written, and I mean this in a good way, they are written like with that kind of textbook type aspiration where you're really trying to unpack something. It's very ambitious, but very, very cool. And I kind of want to back up. I like something you said, you're about being kind of Gen Z. And I don't remember, I'm now not remembering exactly what you said, but like wanting to challenge the status quo. I mean, I guess I'll ask that to both of you kind of. So, I mean, to back up, I mean, I'm actually a younger millennial technically, and you guys are Gen Z. So there's this micro generational thing going on here, which is sort of interesting. But I wanted to, do you kind of view Gen Z with regard to film production or maybe just in general, do you view, like, how do you understand being a part of that generation? Is there like a combative element where it's like you want to change things for the better because they've been so fucked up by boomer? I mean, it's a little bit of a stereotype, a bit of a meme, but I don't know if you're gonna say it. Memes matter, right?
Memes matter.
But do you have that kind of take like that the world's a little screwed up, like maybe made by and for different people, and that you want to approach things differently? Is that something that resonates?
Yeah, I think Phil and I have the same opinion.
Yeah, like I believe, like knowing myself. Also, I'm like the first year of Gen Z. I'm like the first one or whatever. But I always think, because not just that film production, as you said, or like it's in a bad place, quote unquote, or a place where we don't really want it to be. But I think just the world in general is just changing and very crazy, exponential, accelerating pace. Yeah. And it's just getting weirder. I feel like the universe is folding onto itself somehow. Like in that sort of vibe where like the fabric of our reality is kind of changing type vibes. Totally. But so like even on a meta way of me saying that's like a very Gen Z thing to say. So I feel like that I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. It was always my calling. So I kind of like, well, I want to see what what will the Gen Z Kubricks be? What will the Gen Z Paul Thomas Andersons, the David Lynch's be?
Precise.
And I kind of just put myself, knowing that I'm Gen Z, into that category, thinking like, oh, well, that's something that I can like also use, but also that I actually believe, because I do want a sort of revolution in cinema. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think cinema is kind of boring now. There's great movies that come out every year that I love, and but yeah, I also like I want a little bit more Gen Z sort of like swag and that Gen Z sort of mindset into it. I want it to be a little bit more exciting in a way.
Yeah. And I completely agree, and I think that it's really harsh to say that all movies right now are lacking, because that's not true. But what I want to see is a greater application of the films that we're saying that are good, but more on like a more widespread way, because the main box office stuff we can discern is kind of slop. It's essentially just and
it's tired, it's hackneyed, it's old ideas repackaged.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes remakes.
And also they're not like cool ideas to me, and maybe other Gen Z people. Like we kind of have we've seen so many movies about, I don't want to get political, but of social issues and things. Yeah. And when I grew up, what I thought was cool and what ended up probably wanting me to make stories and film were like comic books and like really cool characters and cool worlds and interesting like Gen Z ideas of like, the universe folding into itself, or of like I'm into AI right now. Like, what about like Rocco's Basilisk? That's an interesting, cool idea that I would like to see more mainstream movies like kind of propagate, I guess.
Totally, yeah, because we could be making films in the mainstream that actually teach people and help people to understand their environment better. Yeah.
And I think there's some of that out there, but there's not enough. Yeah, as you said, it'd be good if it would be better if it was more widespread.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not just a okay boomer. It's also like that sense of like I mean, I have this strong sense just that the world has changed so much and that the arts are so dominated by people who haven't necessarily acclimated to those changes or haven't necessarily needed to if they're older and they're financially set, they've got their life. But there's such a divide between, boomers, Gen X, who kind of have that all set up, and then us who are trying to figure this out, trying to figure out how to live on the internet and all these things. And it would be really great if there was kind of more art out there to help us figure it out. And there is, but a lot of it's happening online. But the cool thing about a movie is that it can take you offline, that you can actually go and see it. And again, I don't think any of us are total doomers about this. Like, there is good stuff coming out, but like, it'd be cool if there was more and more, ways to actually get us, because a lot of the cool content online, it's like you're still online. It's cool when there's something that, like in-person events are kind of like that too. Like the one that we met at, and even what we're doing right now, like totally cool. That's also part of it. But even a movie can sort of be that when you're going to a theater and seeing it.
It's a very communal and spiritual experience, a very cathartic kind of witnessing together of all of our emotions, and we see Marvin get shot or whatever, and we all feel the same thing at once and in the same room, and that's more powerful than if we're on Zoom or just watching separately on Discord or something, and it helps people get out and meet people, and ultimately I think that leads to a more fulfilling life, as being outside and having friends.
Totally. And I know both of you guys, like, you go to the movies. You're even talking about going to see Covenant, this new movie later, which
super
I will
excited.
hopefully join. So yeah, there's a kind of a stereotype of like Gen Z kids and young adults like never wanting to leave the house, but I mean, it seems like you guys and other people I know, there is people do want to go out and meet people and go to the movies. It's just the right stuff's got to be there.
Yeah, even like people, moviegoers our age that aren't really into the film scene as like an art, or like who don't know directors, they go to see horror movies and they love it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So just like. Yeah, and I think horror movies right now, at least, or mainstream horror movies are a good example of what Gen Z and maybe audiences in general want to see, is that they want to escape and have like thrills,
Smile was good.
Yeah, Smile was really good, and they don't. Yeah, they just want to see something that will entertain them and maybe creep them out, please them, and that catches their attention in that way. Because it really is an attention war in a way that's going on, and that's something to me is like when I think about the films that I want to make, I'm really inspired by slower sort of movies like Nicholas Winding Refn films, or I always butcher his name, but Apichatpong, who did Uncle Boonby, those, and Haneke, where it's like sort of still, slower, meditative pace and ambience. But
can't forget Alverson.
Can't
forget Rick Alverson.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
He's awesome.
Yeah, but I want to have like that sort of texture, or that sort of space created, but with more fun ideas, like sci-fi. Like, what if Star Wars was made in as a Haneke movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of my idea.
Probably like a little like 2001, right?
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Like there. I would say Tar from last year, did that, but in some ways that is like the ultimate like Gen X movie.
Yeah, I love Tar though.
Tar was probably my favorite movie from last year. Not knocking it.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I kind of hear what you're saying. Like bringing that level of artistry to these more, I guess, even more timely kind of topics.
Yeah, like these more fun, even occult, esoteric topics, and like AI, because
whatever you're talking about.
Yeah, people love to just talk about the Joe Rogan stuff, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Every like normal dude I'm talking to, like at a bar or something like that, is like talking about like what Graham Hancock was talking about on Joe Rogan, like these things that are just interesting people, not like the boring.
The machine elves.
Political conversations that we've had. Yeah, like, what if we made a movie about the machine elves and DMT tripping? Like, stuff that, people would be like, oh, that's cool,
Yeah, it's a little like, not just keep name dropping other people, Gaspar Noé a little bit. No, I hear you, because there's a big, right now I think there's a divide in the culture where stuff that people talk about on, Joe Rogan's a good example, but just podcasts in general, even some of the stuff that they get into it, like, MIA, Meme Intelligence Age, you know what I mean? Like, there's a thriving online counterculture.
Yeah.
But but like mainstream culture and movie culture is not quite embracing it in the way that they could.
Absolutely. Not. Yeah. That's what I hope these two writings can help facilitate in regards to my experience with film sets and different kinds of people.
No, and it's cool, and I like with your writing. I like that you just kind of this work in progress, that you keep writing it as you're working. Mm-hmm. I think my blog that I'm working on now is, as both you know, is writing about a different card in the tarot.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome. It's such important. It's very important. We need more research.
Critical research.
Yeah.
But what's cool, what I like about that is like it's an ongoing process. I'm pulling different cards and writing about them and writing about my life experiences along the way. And I feel like that's kind of also your blogs too. You're going to these different sets. You have it's kind of like gig work, although it's very plentiful gig work.
Very freelance, yeah.
Very freelance.
But I'm also in the union, so I get a very different kind of set of people when you're working union or you're working independent in regards to skill levels and ages. Yeah. So obviously there's more older folks that are on the union sets, for example.
Yeah. Well, one really interesting thing about I guess both filmmaker persona and ethics in film production is I feel like you get into the kind of above versus below the line dynamics really well. I have mostly worked very, very behind the scenes in terms of film industry stuff, but I've been on sets and like I can see there's such a divide in a way between above and below the line. Below the line is like it's kind of scrappier. It's a little more blue collar, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just it's a much more technical art. You would know better than me the difference between union workers and non-union workers. There's all these different levels of different types of workers. And different, you talk about this a little bit in touching on esoteric terms, different wills at play. People want very different things out of their job, whether it's a paycheck, to do their job well, to make the best artistic creation. Mm-hmm. And one interesting thing about the movie industry, and that I think you write about really interestingly, is it's kind of the way these all come together, and sometimes the tensions that can ensue, from your ethics in film production blog, you kind of talk about how it would be better if everyone was on the same page and if everyone was treated with respect, but I feel like that isn't always how it is, right?
Oh, certainly not. I mean, especially when assessing what's occurring in this economy. Yeah. What we're seeing is differentiations and respect for each other's crafts, and you touched on the concept of the phrase above the line and below the line, and I think that's true in regards to kind of an old world understanding of what work is and who does the work. And when you look at a film set, and these days it's no longer, we need a grip, we need a guy who knows how to make a certain type of knot, so let's hire a sailor because he knows, and we'll bring him onto the set and we'll train him how to act and stuff. Nowadays,
they used to do that. That's like old school.
Old school.
That's just a little bit of an aside, but in terms of like the whole old dream of like I'm going to go to Hollywood and get discovered as an actor. That's where that comes from. Like they actually used to need random people to do things. Yeah. Not so much anymore. Now it's very reified. But continue.
Yeah. And now we have film school graduates who are versed in cinema, and they understand cinematic literacy and nuances, and they read books, and they're not, just blue-collar workers who, drink alcohol and get drunk after work. They're really smart people, and that's why I kind of say, like, that phrase, above the line, below the line, isn't applicable anymore, because everybody on a film set is about the same level of sophistication, although it may not be seen as that in regards to, here's the producer, and he drives a BMW, so he's smarter than the guy who's, setting up the light or whatever. Yeah. It's merely just an economic difference. A lot of the fellows that I've worked with, men and women alike, are definitely some of the smartest people I've ever met. Yeah. Hardest working.
No, the technical craft is unbelievable. When I've been on film sets, it's like I stand back because they they know what they're doing.
Yeah. And one essay I wrote called "Anti-Labor Memetics."
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
That is a great example of there is a memetic vibe that's going around the film set memes in which grips are dumb and they drink and they're sexual predators and they do this and that and they do coke, and it's not true.
Wait, about grips?
Grips, yeah.
I thought you were going to say producers.
Oh, no.
Who also have, they actually have some of those issues.
I mean, they can actually afford the coke, and not put a dent in their budget. And what I'm saying, what I want to, mention is that you can make a lot of money in this industry by doing it consecutively.
Yeah.
But, every day you're in the union, I'm a grip, and and I saved all this money. But that's a multi-year long process of mentally strenuous work.
Yeah.
And that will take a toll on your life, your mental health, your relationships. And, regarding ethics in film production, if we can strive towards better sets, conditions-wise, pay-wise, that meme won't exist anymore. The grips being lazy or whatever, because that's ultimately they're a product of the environment that's facilitated by the industry, by working standards, not who they are as people.
Yeah, no.
Because who really wants to be like that?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, it's it's just interesting to think about kind of the different folks at play. I mean, there's a whole world that never even really needs to step foot on a set in terms of producers, and not even to mention agents and financiers, and then then there's people like the director and the line producer who are more boots on the ground, but they're like higher status, and then, as you mentioned, there's people who are very much involved in the very technical stuff. And then there's of course cast, which is kind of a different category altogether, and there's kind of weird hierarchies in play.
Yeah, and I like to say I like to accentuate quote unquote higher status. It's not. It's just a perception of the archetypes that we've been assigned by what people want us to think of ourselves, so we feel content with, I'm totally fine with getting paid $5 more than a guy working at McDonald's, even though I'm doing this highly technical piece of work that not only demands my skill, but also how I'm supposed to act at work. And that's a very nuanced thing that not many people can have.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's all kind of a learned behavior that's due to be shaken up. It feels like it is getting shaken up. I mean, another thing that you've written about is the kind of hashtag set life thing, which you're against. Like, you're not a fan of kind of posturing, like, oh, look at me, I know how to use all this fancy equipment, look at me, I'm a filmmaker. And yet, even that is kind of a sign of change, right? Because now what was once seen as a very technical and almost blue-collar job is something that people are actually getting popular social media accounts kind of advertising themselves as a grip or as like a set lighting technician, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And what I think is very interesting about that is the economics behind these images.
Yeah.
As I discussed in the essay, although these people are posing with this equipment, what we aren't acknowledging is what's occurring behind the scenes. Although you look sexy doing this, you're like, wow, here's the light, here's the stand, whatever. It's possible that the people in these images are getting paid lower than they should be. This is regarding the non-union kind of set lifers. But it's presenting an industry that needs dire change to reel in more people, but this simply is not the case, like in regards to how truly sexy it is and the mental toll it takes on people.
No, definitely. It's always an interesting thing. Like, film, obviously working in film is this big sought after thing.
It is.
And like, as a result, that actually lowers wages, because like everyone wants to do it so badly. It's like, well, if anyone would be willing to give this a shot, like, I don't have to pay you as much. That's obviously bullshit, but I think that has happened to a large extent. I know. So I used to work as an assistant at an agency, which is a different side of the industry. Similar dynamics applied. It's a notoriously overworked and underpaid job.
Absolutely.
That's seen as a stepping stone, but like, you're lucky to have it. Like, that's very much what it is. And obviously that's an economic reality in some ways, but it also, it's there's movements like Me Too and Time's Up and all this, but like there's kind of a bigger issue, which is this more general exploitative environment, and but that's even just on like the assistant, like, sort of behind the scenes suits, agency assistant to producer type pipeline, which exists. But then, like, below versus above the line is another thing. Again, cast is another thing. There's a kind of top 1% of actors who can do whatever they want, and the rest of them are actually pretty underpaid and exploited, even like people that you maybe would recognize from TV, probably in some way, and that was part of what, Me Too and all that.
Yeah.
There's these different levels of exploitation, and not to kind of paint it all with too broad of a brush, but I think there's a general need for, like,
Totally, and just to accentuate, it is a privilege to work on a film set. It's just that we need to ensure that it remains as such, and it's not just a facade of privilege to be there, because it's an honor to be on a set, and I love helping light a movie, and I love being around all these people who share the similar love that I have for it, and that's why my heart hurts so much when I'm witnessing all these problems and what, made me want to write these things.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It just would be better, I think, not just on the set, but then also behind the scenes and in the agency world, and just a whole across, like, there's just more of a greater acknowledgement of, the holistic process of making a movie.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to focus on that word holistic. I think it's, talk about, like, holistic healing. That's another corner of, like, esoteric stuff in a way that
totally.
I don't even know if any of us are particularly into, but it is an interesting concept of doing something in a more holistic manner. And I think one kind of global thought I have on what you're writing in both ethics and film production, maybe even more so in Filmmaker Persona, is that you are advocating a more holistic way of making movies, of getting everyone on the same page, and that's kind of like an economic, like, power dynamics issue that we've been talking about, but it's also a creative issue.
Absolutely.
And you talk about that in your article, like, the different levels of will. You kind of already brought this up, but, the different wills at play. Even in your article, The Ethics of Drug Use, how, it's one thing that gets... You write in that article about how one bad result of people using drugs on set, other than the obvious, is that it can kind of put people on very different wavelengths. And really, this should be, even though it's a team effort, having it be something where everyone's on the same page and everyone is jazzed to be making this creative product. I mean, you think that makes the best movies, right?
Yeah, when everyone's on the same vibe, and that also means the drugs that people are doing. Like, people are doing, as I talk about in the essay, that, people are doing pills, they're caffeine, nicotine. Nicotine and caffeine are the biggest ones, and that's cool, like, do what you please, but you may act funny when you're doing these things, and if we're not all on the same wavelength, if we're truly trying to create something great, then we should all be on the same page, wavelength-wise, and that has to do with what we're consuming and why we're consuming it, because ultimately people are doing these things because of the long hours to compensate for... I have to wake up and I have a family, and then maybe I didn't get enough sleep. I gotta drink this, smoke that, smoke this, take this, and I'm very sure that we can work towards, and we will see the day when we all don't have to take these things, to feel normal at work. That we can be happy, go to work and feel okay. Yeah, because it's encouraged to do these things. Like, when you are at work, there's the coffee. Everyone's going to go smoke outside, usually. Yeah. And there's an excess of coffee.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm not anti-coffee or anything. I'm just saying, like, maybe it's not the best that you're just drinking caffeine all the time.
Yeah, no, I recently stopped drinking coffee because I realized I was overdoing it. And it is a drug. Like, I drink green tea now, which also has caffeine.
Dude, me too.
Yeah,
that's what I'm on.
Yeah,
green tea. Yeah.
A little more mellow, and I mean, it's not even just the film industry issue, but it's a bigger issue with caffeine and, like, our emphasis on productivity. But no, that's interesting. And at first it's like the ethics of drug use. It sounds kind of funny, like, well, obviously just people probably shouldn't be taking drugs on sets, but then we're talking about, like, drugs that we don't even think of as drugs, like caffeine and nicotine.
Absolutely.
And then, it's a little more out there, but in terms of getting people on the same wavelength, I mean, some filmmakers have done it. I was just telling both of you guys I watched Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain yesterday, and indeed, he took LSD as part of inspiration for that, and he gave the cast psilocybin mushrooms for one of the scenes, and
psilocybin.
Sorry, yes.
No worries.
No worries. I always mispronounce that word. Psilocybin, yeah, wow. But anyhow, so, like, it is a thing that can be done, and it can be done in a better way. I mean, you don't want to be tripping balls and the only person doing that on set, but I mean, for creative ends, it can be done.
And I wrote about further in that essay that it makes sense to allow creatives to do that kind of thing if they so please, because ultimately the greatest art comes from a Dionysian mind. Yeah. And then it's, the technic's job to Apollonianly, I just made that up. Achieve what it is they're trying to do, and the best way to do that is if we're all sober.
Yeah.
And they can do all they want, and if there's a set in which somehow everyone is able to be like, okay, we're all going to be on X drug or something, and somehow that won't affect the safety or something of what's occurring, then I suppose that's all right, because it's in the name of creating a very poignant film.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's what we really need here.
Definitely. Well, yeah, you bring up the Apollonian versus Dionysian element, which is interesting. I mean, one interesting sort of Camille Paglia-esque take you have, and I think filmmaker persona is a little bit Paulian in its very name, isn't it?
But certainly, yeah. She's a huge inspiration.
Oh, for sure. No, you can see that. But your article on phallic imagery, this was actually again with regard to the way people might post sort of very phallic cameras on their social media. So that was kind of specifically what you're getting at there. But you make a kind of interesting side point, which is that there's something very Apollonian about the camera, and you even compare kind of the way it captures light to an archer with a bow, as a Sagittarius. I like that a lot. But there's, the film is a fascinating interplay, in short, between Dionysian and Apollonian art forms. The act of capturing it, the act of probably writing it even, and editing it, those are pretty Apollonian, but the act of performing it and some other stuff that goes on is very Dionysian. That's kind of more of an observation, but do you have any kind of thoughts on film as either of you, film as an interplay between the Apollonian and Dionysian?
Yeah, my moon is in Sagittarius, so I'm very much, Virgo sun, my moon's in Sag. But, THRLL, do you have any thoughts on that? I do, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Not really. I mean, I feel like writing is very much both. I think a lot of things are very much both.
Yeah.
Where you have to kind of find out, I guess, using the idea of the filmmakers on drugs, and you need the lighting guys to be sober to be able to pull it off. That's kind of how I think of my creative process and writing in general, where I need to let out all the LSD trip thing and whatever comes to me from God, and then I
for real.
Then you gotta be more logistically minded and craft it as more of an architect, technical level, I guess.
I completely agree. Yeah. And really the purpose of that essay was to cathonically break down in a Jungian analytic kind of way what exactly people are doing subconsciously when they evoke this archetype of Apollo.
Yeah.
And that's really the only answer I could come up with as to why someone would feel as though they want to pose with phallic objects such as cameras or lights.
For social media, right?
Yeah, social media cloud, because it's a very prominent image when you're seen with those things, and I'm not hating on it either. I love lights. I love aesthetics of film equipment. But like I said earlier, we need to be careful with what we're promoting and why, especially if the behind the scenes of the image hasn't been taken with the utmost care.
Right, because then it's just pure ego trip, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Pure ego and only going toward that, whereas, again, I think the vision you're trying to bring to it is of a much more collective, for the art kind of thing. And I guess just to comment on that a little further, for a lot of people hearing this, if they work in the industry, maybe it seems like pie in the sky, obviously Hollywood is a business, filmmaking is a business, a lot of economic relations are going to come into it. At the end of the day, it's about making money. There's a lot of just gross businessy stuff that's always going to be there, but there, again, we brought up Jodorowsky. That's also Lynch, who kind of meditates with his entire cast and crew. Even I think anyone who works on a Lynch set is welcome to meditate with him. There's these different filmmakers out there who do embody this, and you kind of already said. I'm just putting words in your mouth or making you say it again. But you do think this is how we make the best films, right? Is that collective action, right?
I do, and a more mainstream example that's not as esoteric would be Quentin Tarantino. Mr. Tarantino will have a take, and they'll want to do another take, and he'll say, why? Because we all love making movies, and everyone says it together. Or he'll play music during the while people breaking up. This is what I've heard. He'll play music or whatever. And same with Robert Rodriguez, who's a huge inspiration for me as a young Latino man. He'll play his guitar or something during set, and or he'll have music be playing. Same kind of deal. That's although it's not as esoteric, it's still the facilitation of vibes.
Yeah.
And I think too, like as a film, if you really love like movies, and you, like, to me, growing up as a kid, making whole movies with your friends, that there's something you realize, that it's a communal thing, and that you love, your best friend is like the cameraman, and all these little roles were all still like in it, together at the end of the day.
Movie, if you guys saw, which I didn't like.
Yeah, and also like it makes me think about like SEAL Team 6 or like Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
Because I remember reading that that they're like the top of the top. Their training is really crazy. They can learn like a new language in like 2 days, and like when they're out like going on missions. Really? Yeah, something like that. Like going on like
crazy.
Their missions and like their tasks. That they have this, that they feel this group sort of think. They get in this sort of zone. If they're like raiding something that or like whatever they do, that they are in this. They're not thinking. They're thinking purely collectively, and they feel like they know exactly when. One of the guys gonna like bust down the door or whatever, So when I think of them as like top of the top, like U.S. military people or whatever, like that makes sense for it to be like to work in film. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. I think a lot of the best things are created that way. There's kind of an auteurist element in a lot of creativity, and certainly in filmmaking. I mean, I do think sometimes having a director as like a benevolent dictator is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I like the auteurs, but I think bringing it as a collective effort is for the best. I think Lynch does that really well, seemingly. Jodorowsky. But of course, we have to acknowledge
Wes Anderson as well.
Absolutely.
He does that. I understand that he apparently, on his last film, it happened. I listened to a podcast about it, but he'll like have people
The French Dispatch
literature. He'll have literature that people can take out of like kind of like a library type deal, and so they can learn to a greater extent what it is they're making. So
that's amazing.
And then just a last note as well. You can facilitate vibes without actually, from what I just to be fair. Let's take for example a director like. Refn, for example. Let's say you really like Refn and you end up actually working on a Refn film. You already understand the vibe that you're going into and that you kind of need to facilitate before you even get there. So if you're an established auteur already, it's possible that the crew may already pick up that vibe before you even get there. So you kind of you could either have a resume of films that inspire people to come and help facilitate your vibe naturally, or you can also just not only have that, but also do things to facilitate
your vibe
that.
will precede you.
Yeah, exactly. If you have that already. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I started to interrupt you.
No worries. I was going to also acknowledge that there's some great filmmakers who do not do this. Like Kubrick, as it was notoriously a nightmare to work with, and Hitchcock. So, I mean, there's great movies that don't rely on the vibes, that really are made by a much more tyrannical, I guess, dictator. But
I still think
is ethically, I think, worth aspiring to.
Yeah, and that's still a vibe.
Yeah.
Like, even being the tyrannical dude, like, okay, like, we're gonna make some serious shit. Like,
there's a way to do that that's probably better than than others. But but also, I think there's something to be said for politically and just kind of socially. I feel like we live less and less in a world where being a tyrannical dude is okay, and more in a world where if you can harness the vibes,
absolutely,
the power. I feel like that's even more necessary now to be like a benevolent David Lynch type rather than a Kubrick type. Because nowadays, and I'm not really saying one thing about it or the other. I'm not saying like, I'm not like one of these like anti-woke like, back in the day, like it was better because we could harass women. Nothing like that. Just kind of matter of factly know the world has changed. You're not going to get away with doing whatever the fuck you want for your art. Like you have to vibe. And I think there's a little bit of a generational thing where it's like, something has changed sociologically that sometimes people complain about, that like people are more sensitive or something. But hey, it's where we live in, and like there is a way to still make great art in it, and it's by, I think, vibing. Yeah.
And to kind of just to wrap up kind of what I think in regards to that, I think that it's no one should ever be abused on a film set. Ever.
Yeah.
That said, what if everyone trusts you enough to have that kind of film set, not abuse-wise, but, you know, to have such a stressful environment to create this particular kind of art and everyone kind of consents to it? Yeah. I think that's fair because it's consensual.
Yeah. Because even David Lynch, you know, gets angry. There's like videos of him like, you are a dictator as a filmmaker. Like,
people are human. That, so.
But you know, that also, in a good way, puts more pressure on the writers and the filmmakers themselves, whose vision it is, because you know that means you need to make something that everybody is going to vibe with. Yeah, you know what I mean? That people are actually going to be excited for, like. Yeah, that's how it should be. Yeah, you know, I would imagine would it be cool, like if you go into making, you know, as even someone below the line, a Wes Anderson film, that you feel like you're in his world in a way, you know, and that you match the vibe and you really, you know, like the project you're working on, you know. Yeah.
From now on, I'll try to stay away from the word vibe. I'm saying it's
but true. That's the vibe
it's the word of the aeon. Right?
That's the word. Yeah, no, I
one of the
totally
words.
agree.
Yeah, it's one of the great words of all time.
I just need to expand my vocabulary. But yes, I agree. Yes.
No, there was the other day. I think about like I know Chris and Blair talking about this, but like the other day, my girlfriend was showing me a TikTok, and it was of this like weird sugar glider. This is so fucking random.
No, I love it.
It was like a sugar glider on TikTok, and it was wearing a cowboy hat. And it's got like these like bead black eyes, and I don't know if you guys have heard this meme, but the comment was like, "Are there any thoughts behind those eyes?" I don't know. That's a thing you see sometimes. Yeah, I don't really even know what it means. It's kind of funny. But then the first comment was like, "No thoughts, only vibes." I was like, "Wow, that's so like now, you know, that mentality."
I think I came up with this myself. Words are the vibe killer. You know,
that's true.
Words are the vibe killer.
Been there.
Because because I have
the
issues
vibe that
with.
can be named is not the eternal vibe.
Dude, yeah. Bro, because I have issues with words sometimes. I feel like words mess us up a lot of the times. Like if I say, you know, I can't really give an example, but if I, you know, say, if I say something and you can take it the wrong way, it's pretty postmodern, you know. Yeah. I say something and I mean something completely different than what you get out of it.
But words are fungible now.
Yeah, words are just like, you know, they're kind of fucking us up as society if you think about it sometimes.
As we know Burroughs would say.
And like I'm just ready to communicate with vibes because I trust the vibe communication more than the words.
And to expand on that, and from a technician's mindset, in the book Set Lighting Technician's Handbook by Harry Box, he talks about, you know, my job. And within my job, one of the requirements of it is clairvoyance. To understand what the gaffer needs when he needs it and try to anticipate, you know, without using words or even sign language from afar, what it is you need to execute for them for the scene. So it's inherently within filmmaking that clairvoyance is certainly required.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you write about this, and I think some people who are not into esoteric stuff would be like, what is this stuff? Like, how am I supposed to apply astrology to filmmaking and all this stuff? But, like, you know, a well-functioning set is something that does kind of go beyond words, goes beyond mere good planning. Like, it is this incredible harmony of different people doing very different things but coming together to make a product, which any group art project is, but you know, but filmmaking is like the most expensive, sort of highest tier of that we've really achieved as a species, frankly. I guess beyond like building the pyramids or something.
Yeah.
And like so, yeah, it does have to go beyond logic. Like whether or not you believe in esotericism, like we need like almost that clairvoyance. There has to be the vibe. Like it has to be there in order to sort of transcend and make something greater. I'm looking at this quote I have on my outline. It's not a good quote from a good work of literature. It's just from Wikipedia. But I'll just go ahead and read it because it kind of ties in a little bit about Jodorowsky making The Holy Mountain. From Wikipedia, the central members of the cast spent 3 months doing various spiritual exercises, guided by Oscar Ichazo. I don't really know who that is, but of the Orisha Institute, whatever. You know, probably something of significance in the 70s. The Africa training features Zen. The Arika, sorry. The Arika, which is the institute's from. The Arika training features Zen, Sufi, and yoga exercises along with eclectic concepts drawn from the Kabbalah, the I Ching, and the teachings of George Gurdjieff, another name I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyhow, you know.
He's like a occult esotericist philosopher.
Yeah, no doubt.
Mm-hmm,
It says, after the training, the group lived for 1 month communally in Jodorowsky's home before production. Thereafter, the filming started in early 1972. The film was shot sequentially entirely in Mexico at a budget of $750,000. Jodorowsky was also instructed by Ichazo to take LSD for the purposes of spiritual exploration, and he administered psilocybin mushrooms to the actors during the shooting of the death rebirth scene. So anyway, for whatever reason, I was putting this outline together. I pulled that quote out from Wikipedia because I just think, that's the extreme, right? That's the extreme of really making esoteric. That's the extreme of esoteric filmmaking. It's also the extreme of cultivating a vibe. But hey, the movie's great. I just watched it yesterday. And
let's briefly talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about Holy Mountain a little bit. But it's just a good illustration of kind of the foregoing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an extreme methodology. But if, let's say, for example, let's look at something more, not extreme, which is the making of Magnolia. There's a documentary of Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, and if you watch the documentary, you can tell that he is cultivating the vibes during the writing and script process, and it is akin to that in regards to how kind of, maybe strenuous isn't the right word, but how important it is he's trying to make sure that everyone creatively is on the same page.
Definitely. And even just something I think much simpler is, David Lynch's meditation techniques on sets, 20 minutes beginning of end of day, you don't need to be on psilocybin, but, you're still kind of joining into some kind of collective vibe, to say it again there, and I think it can be beneficial. But yeah, you want to talk a little bit about, I know neither of you have seen the Holy Mountain, and it's you said, I don't know if you want to share, but you said you saw the beginning and it freaked you out a little bit, right?
Oh yeah, it freaked me out.
The beginning is very intense.
It is
There's
intense.
a lot of Jesus imagery and some other things. Yeah,
I'll say I watched recently the first 20 minutes of the film, and I got farther than my first time, and I didn't stop because I got scared. I'll just say that with that film, as we know his process of making it, and you watch, it really is kind of, please disagree with me since you actually finished it. It's a very symbolic, metaphorical journey of, these
Western esotericism.
These frogs are exploding, and I think that has a lot to say, has a lot to do with the process that he went through, and I'm curious to see applying his methodology to making that film, but to something that's not so blatantly esoteric.
Right.
Because I feel like that's what kind of, as a Zoomer, it's hard for me to watch movies sometimes, and it takes a great deal for me to concentrate.
Yeah, no, same. So, it is hard sometimes, right?
When I'm watching that, I'm kind of turned off by how it looks. Just because it's inherently, I'm watching it on digital, I'm not seeing it in its original form, as well as I'm not seeing it in the theater, so it's kind of more, it's like watching Eraserhead, at home. Yeah. And I kind of just caught this thing where it's man, I can't really enjoy this because of the, I feel this way kind of about the film, Z, for example.
I haven't seen it.
It's like an older Greek film, but basically...
maybe I've seen it.
Yeah, it's about, politics, but what I'm trying to get at is, if we just apply this methodology to modern films, but maybe just tried to make something that was kind of more tangible for the general audience, then we would get great results. Maybe not giving people drugs. You could do that, but, obviously with great care and respect and consent, but as well as, group meditating together or, stuff like that, but including the crew as well. That's key, I think. That would bring great benefits to poignantly making cinema.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what did you think of the Holy Mountain?
I loved it.
I
thought I was blown away. My girlfriend, who's Gen Z, came in and she was like, "What the hell are you watching?" It's not for everyone. It's Eraserhead's a good comparison, except if anything, it's even weirder than Eraserhead.
That's true. I love that little baby.
Yeah. Eraserhead, Eraserhead sort of makes sense on a science fiction-y level, albeit very surreal. Holy Mountain is pure. It's like an LSD trip, which is a very tired thing to say about a movie, but it is. It kind of gets you stoned a little bit, and but also has for someone who studied Kabbalah and alchemy and tarot, there's a lot that you will understand, and that was really why I watched it, is because I'm very into tarot, and I was like, oh, there's actually a movie about this a little bit, and so I liked it, and the sort of the beauty and at times horror of the images, but the general well-madness, that's a really not good way of putting it, but the way that the way he presents images is very beautiful and striking. And that's what drew me through it, even though, obviously plot-wise it's confusing. But it's a lot of 70s nostalgia, and just I found it very beautiful to look at.
Right.
And ultimately, I think I understood sort of the esoteric dimension and really, really appreciate it. THRLL, you were saying it's one of Kanye West's favorite movies, allegedly?
I believe so. I believe it might be his favorite, but and he's referenced it. And
he likes Akira a lot, too.
And he's referenced it in Yeezus. I forget what song. And it makes...
re-listen to Yeezus now.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, my one thing is, how does he square that with being... I guess maybe this... Obviously, Kanye is a very conflicted man, and he wasn't always the Christian nationalist we know today. Because in a way, Jodorowsky describes himself as an atheist mystic. Like, he is mystical, but he's also, like, pretty anti-organized religion, I guess. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe he's not anti, like, Reddit atheist or anything, but, like... He's not Christian, to say the least, and I think there's some critique with that frog exploding scene you mentioned of conquistadors and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's some critique of Christ as a figure in that movie.
And I actually have a note about how I felt about the cinematography from what I saw. I think that the opening is great because it's in a much more controlled lighting and set environment.
Yeah.
But when you look at, for example, the exteriors, I felt as though there could have been... I don't mean to just like shit talk a really great film because I'm not. I'm just saying that he only had so many things available to him regarding lighting and grip that I felt as though if he had the resources to apply, he could have made a much more poignant film if he had, here's this fly swatter and we're going to put this specific type of rag on it, diffusion, for those who don't know, or like, we have these bigger lights and we could try to change it to look more like this. As I could tell in the exteriors, perhaps I'm wrong, but it didn't seem like he had that much control over them because they were either so large of sets. And I felt like that kind of held it back from being a more poignant kind of film. Granted, I didn't see it on film, but I think that's just something that would have made it better. And another reason as to why we should continue to pursue that kind of filmmaking.
Because there's still
work to be done. There's still things we can, more precisely manage if we, properly allocated budgets to, properly paying people and, etc.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we talked about kind of Jodorowsky being interested in tarot, and again, that was one of the major reasons. I haven't seen his deck.
He uses the Marseille deck.
He uses the Marseille deck, but he also made his own cards, right?
I think I've heard that before. I really don't know, honestly, but I know he's a big fan of the Marseille deck. I think he wrote a book about it or something.
You Evan, you were saying you saw it in PR, the Philosophical Research Society library, right?
Right, yeah. We saw it at the PRS. It's there if anyone wants to go try to take a look at it.
Yeah. THRLL, you were there 2 days ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was there the other day
I was
in the library.
To go on Friday.
Okay, yeah.
But I couldn't because of work.
Yeah, I was
maybe
just
next Friday.
in the library, but I was just working my own writing. I didn't really I just caught the vibes,
Oh, yeah.
Working on my writing. I didn't really, I browsed around a little, but I didn't
I'm trying to
get any knowledge.
Hopefully next Friday. Sometimes I get off work a little early on Fridays, and it's my dream to finally go. Because this is Manly, for listeners who don't know, this is Manly P. Hall, who's an esotericist, had a library and sort of lecture center in Los Feliz, Los Angeles. And they still open up his library of incredible esoteric works one day a week on Fridays. So I mean to check it out. It's only a few hours a week that it's open, but it's worth seeing. I swore you'd said you saw his Jodorowsky's. They have some tarot decks there, right?
They have lots of tarot decks. They have all the decks.
You can look at them.
They got the Thoth deck. They have all of them. But
you can
also
take them down and play with them.
Yeah, play with the cards. I think you can. Also, PRS I think has its own tarot deck that it sells. Yeah,
Manly P. Hall.
I'm definitely on the Thoth deck right now,
yeah.
And then you like the Hermetic one too, and then I like the Jung deck as well.
Wait, did Jung actually make it?
I think it's just based off of
his
teachings, but I feel like it encapsulates them really well, and I got some good answers, and I enjoy using them.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, on the subject of So you haven't seen? I've ever seen any other Jodorowsky?
No.
So I watched Santa Sangre, which I think is on Tubi. Fantastic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think I have seen any other
like-
Jodorowsky.
Brings Hitchcock. Santa Sangre kind of brings Hitchcock together with the Jodorowsky thing. But Jodorowsky aside, I mean, what are obviously we talk about Lynch, and I know Evan, you really like Kenneth Anger. Like, who are in both of your minds like some of the best filmmakers who explore esoteric subjects? Like, what are the key films for you guys?
Well, definitely you mentioned Anger because he has a an ability to be more experimental, or what he did in the past at least. Apparently he has new films that are kind of private or something.
Yeah, he has some that are considered lost films.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously I'm not as versed, but I think it's actually a pretty small kind of, that we know of, market that, I try to watch mainly just the big ones, like the big good ones that,
like Scorpio Rising and stuff.
Yeah, in regards to Anger.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm saying in regards to movies that I try to watch,
yeah.
I don't necessarily watch films mainly out of, esoteric purposes, and I will seek them out when I feel called to, but I try to...
No, it's not the type of thing that you want to be like, oh, I'm going to watch every esoteric... No, like, as with any esotericism, you learn it, you live with it, you take it at your own pace, because it's not like knowledge you can cram in your head as if from a book. It's cramming before a test in college. It's much more experiential, occult wisdom.
Yeah, I definitely try to focus on being cinematically literate, in comparison to the overall populace. Yeah. But I also, have my own kind of stuff that I'll watch, and Anger, Lynch. Obviously I haven't finished Holy Mountain, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Do you have any other ideas?
I feel like Kubrick had some esoteric stuff.
How could I have left that out? God.
I feel like his stuff is just riddled with esoteric symbols,
especially
and
Eyes
all
Wide
this
Shut.
Stuff. Yeah, Eyes Wide Shut.
Shut.
You just get those vibes. Yeah,
and that's
the Shining, though. Yeah,
yeah.
That's
true.
the great part too. What's really interesting is that when we're watching his films, we're not seeing like, oh, it's a freaking pentacle, or it's like, oh, they're doing this thing that I saw and. By Crowley, it's really just, like, it's so subliminal.
Yeah.
Because he was a smart guy.
And a psychic, I've heard.
I bet, yeah.
But, with Anger, it's interesting. Jodorowsky's very on the, not in a bad way, but pretty on the nose with a lot of the symbolism. Anger, some of his films are basically spells or invocations themselves. So you see it on the nose. But another thing that's interesting about Anger is I feel like he, very much, is emphasizing that like all film kind of has these esoteric elements to it. He's kind of considered one of the godfathers of like the music video, utilizing pop music or rock music in his films, and he calls his main body of work the Magic Lantern cycle in reference to the old type of projector. Like there's that kind of very magical idea, but as with a lot of great occult stuff, it's not, oh, look at me doing this special secret thing. It's more like, no, I'm doing this consciously that you are all doing unconsciously. I think there's an element of that.
I think all like movie magic, I think all movies are magical. Like the creation of it is esoteric.
Definitely.
Whether you know it or not.
And
Okay.
Awesome.
We my computer died because we are in this field, but we're gonna keep going anyway because Evan was about to make a good point. We were talking about Kenneth Anger and the Magic Lantern cycle, and
yeah, I was gonna mention another interesting esoteric filmmaker. Although he's not behind the scenes, Tom Cruise.
Yes,
coming from Scientology.
Yes.
Yeah.
As I think Scientology is inherently just a very esoteric. Worldview, considering Hubbard's involvement with, the OTO and such, I feel as though he was certainly influenced. And with that in mind, the kind of bravado and skill that, Cruise brings to the screen is inherently esoteric, I think, because
definitely.
He's so damn good.
Yeah, and there's the whole sort of Camille Paulian angle on the glittering image and how certain, not even Camille Paulian but other Anger actually absolutely talk about this in Hollywood Babylon and elsewhere, how the actors and actresses are like our closest thing to like royalty in America,
yeah.
but also kind of like gods. Like, I know it sounds blasphemous
I mean,
to say, but people kind of worship them. Historically, I think things are changing a little bit. There's a little bit less cult of personality now than there once was, or it's not as erotically charged as it once was, but it's still there.
The red carpet.
Tom Cruise is still there, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Totally. And what I think is, you know, just to kind of touch on more like kind of ethics of film production, filmmaker persona type, you know, ideology kind of, the utilization of the red carpet, not just, you know, on the main Hollywood stage, you know, like, you know, in Hollywood, but you can bring a red carpet kind of anywhere and just say like, this is the red carpet and my independent film was on the red carpet and it's not the same one.
Yeah.
And what we're, you know, kind of, you know, moving more, you know, talking about independent film, what we're seeing, you know, from Hollywood to the internet is the democratization of these gods that we're talking about. And, you know, Logan Paul, I guess, is, you know, kind of like a god.
I was going to say that
people.
too. Like,
yeah.
Logan Paul is the new god, not
Logan
Tom
Paul.
Cruise.
Who else is it? Like,
well, yeah, and I think
Logan
it's more
Paul,
like with Gen Z too. There's a lot more because of the internet and everything. Subcultures.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
like maybe now there's more gods with like smaller but as loyal as followings. Like, you know.
Yeah, like a Sam Hyde as like a trickster.
Yeah, yeah.
Good example.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Bronze is a right wing example, like Bronze Age pervert and
Yeah.
people like that.
there's even there's like obviously Trisha Paytas. I don't like
some kind of something, right?
But being who we are, we very rarely you know, will meet the Trisha Paytas stan. But I'm certain we'll meet them in our Hollywood, you know, journeys.
Definitely. Yeah, well, my next question on the outline is Hollywood even still a thing? We've kind of, I think,
touched on that
and got into it a little bit. I mean, you know, THRLL, well, you moved out here a few years ago, right?
It was like 6 months ago, actually.
Okay, so you're 6 months. Evan, you're a little newer. I've been here for 5 years. None of us are from here. But, you know, we have varying degrees of being new to LA. And, I mean, so there's kind of, we talked about this, like how obviously Hollywood has changed. There's the kind of influencer influence. I mean, that's one of the major things that's kind of changed the nature of stardom, and also changed, you know, what goes along with influencers, social media, TikTok, Instagram has sort of changed the way we consume content. It's changed things, but things have also stayed the same. People still like movies. You guys still go to them. I still like them. People still make them, etc. So there is still a Hollywood vibe, right? And people are still making movies, but it has changed. I mean, I think there's things to be said in both directions. We could talk a lot about how much it's changed, but you know, especially kind of coming to LA, you still feel a certain energy. You were saying, right?
Certainly.
Yeah, I absolutely do too. And I still felt that magic of like working in Hollywood. I was you know, I worked for like a Fox show as a Fox like pilot thing, you know. And you still felt that magic that
my
the people.
My first job was a CBS show.
It's like the people I'm working with, they're kind of wizards in a way, and I think Hollywood still is alive. I mean, but it depends on how you define Hollywood, because, you know, we still have the studios and they're still making movies that hit, you know, to the audiences, like Top Gun and stuff, and even Marvel, you know. But and, you know, Disney is still, you know, doing their thing with, you know, all their Marvel IPs and everything. But it is changing, and it feels like the magic is dying because of like probably like late capitalism or whatever, you know. It's more just, and streaming has really changed the quality of a lot of things.
Certainly.
But I still feel like there definitely is like a Hollywood, like especially the actual Hollywood, as in the LA studio film industry. Yeah, it's still very much
the magic is a little more diffuse, but it's still there. And I mean, obviously Hollywood and LA are sort of different topics here, but you were even saying, Evan, like going to PRS, the Philosophical Research Center, how like it's still good to be here. There's still things you only get in LA like that, you know.
Certainly. And in regards to Hollywood existing, I completely agree. I think it still does. And, you know, to add on to the kind of magic that people have when filmmaking here, I think that also it's a matter of infrastructure. There's a great deal of infrastructure here that, you know, unlike anywhere else really, where you know, catch, you know, the Hollywood magic of, you know, how much resources we have available to be able to execute something. That said, with the evolution of capitalism that THRLL remarked on, that despite this evolution of technology regarding LEDs, as I touched on in one of my essays, the metaphysics of tungsten, carbon arc, and HMIs, the reason why we use LEDs is simply out of convenience. And although we have this huge expenditure of resources in regards to LEDs, and they're pretty inexpensive, the greatest tools are already at our disposal. We don't need to keep innovating in the sense that these lights that I mentioned prior, same with film versus digital. I strongly believe, and I do think it's true, that these fixtures and that methodology has a greater energy than that of LEDs, because scientifically we can look at the wavelengths and the wavelengths that lights put out. Tungsten, HMI, and carbon arc give a certain wavelength. It's like infrared that is not akin to that of the LED. And if we look to the greatest films in history, they were lit with tungsten, carbon arc, and HMIs.
Yeah.
And if we're trying to make something that's truly great, then we ought to utilize these tried and true. And in America we have that luxury, but there's kind of this weird capitalist thing going on.
It's not as cost effective to shoot on film or to use these types of lightings. But
because you need specialized people to operate these things, and they don't really teach that in school anymore. Since the inception of the Red One, its introduction to film schools. And what we're seeing is a drop in technical proficiency in regards to understanding electricity, as well as the nuances of lighting. I think a great example of a really good nuanced lighting shot is, I don't mean to use Tarantino, but
it's cool.
That's his Pulp Fiction. There's a scene where John Travolta's walking into Mia's house, and there's these pillars, and it's kind of like a leading line shot, and as he's passing these pillars, there's lights that are in between each window of these pillars, and he's walking through each light, and then it goes dark, there's the pillar, and then he walks to the next one, there's the light again. And stuff like that is what brings dynamics to lighting and cinematography. And
it's all lost,
It's all lost, because we're just like bringing these super soft lights, and that's great, but we're missing that, like I mentioned, the infrared, how it interacts with skin and how it brings a more faithful color to how people look, as well as
it's like we all agree on some of this stuff looks better, I feel like.
Absolutely, as well as the precision that's required to execute with these lights and film too, is automatically puts you at in a circumstance in which you're required to be more precise with what it is you're doing.
Exactly. And the same goes for film, right? And the development process. And all that is lost. But it's like audiences agree that there is magic to analog. I mean, I think when we're talking about the loss of the magic, a lot of it is this movement from analog to digital. And, we're not totally opposed to digital, but it's like, it's worth noting that, like, there is something lost. And, there's this, in late capitalism, whatever, it's like there's this understanding, like, oh, we have to do the thing that's most cost effective, but, like, why?
Exactly.
Shouldn't we be just making... I mean, obviously, no, it is a business, so, like, we're going to be churning out as many movies as possible. And yet... it's like the best stuff would come from this greater degree of precision.
And you see that with what the big studios are making, like there's going to be a new like Little Mermaid movie coming out, and they did like the Lion King and live action like that. They're just trying to, at least Disney and these big studios are just finding whatever IP. You hear producers talk, and they're like, "Oh, I found this guy that wrote a book because it's something that's existing that has some sort of fan base." So they're mentality really is to just make something that already exists, like an IP, and so because it's more probable to get more revenue when we don't really see the Little Mermaids come out right now. You know what I mean?
And I'm kind of for the remake of IPs, for example, like the Holy Mountain, as I discussed earlier. But I don't think that's what America needs. We need more films that are about what America is like now, and this new stories that are coming out. And although that's, been shown to fail sometimes, if we just apply the methodologies that we've been talking about, within the show, I'm certain like that we can create what it is that we're missing.
No, absolutely.
And I don't think Rick Rubin says this, like, when talking about making music, and he's like, the audience doesn't know what they want, you know? And I think of that too, like, we don't really know what we want for the future of cinema or Gen Z cinema.
Right.
But we'll, you know, if we keep on trying to do,
like,
just
benevolent
going,
artists can give it to them.
yeah,
you know?
if we just keep on going and make it pure art, you know, then it'll just kind of happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the audience should be innocent in that way of not necessarily knowing what they want, because then they're willing to be surprised. That's good.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's an abuse of the innocence of the audience, you know, when it's like, because the audience is innocent, we'll just keep feeding them the same crap.
Yeah,
but in reality,
true.
it should be, because the audience is innocent, like, we can take some risks. And,
Yeah.
like, really, you know, obviously that's not how capitalism works, but that's how art should work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. This is really out there, but I'm just going to ask you, Evan, like, you're talking about lighting, and you're also interested in Kabbalah. Do you ever think about your set, you know, very technical set lighting? Do you ever think of it in terms of Kabbalah? Or if the answer is no, don't feel bad. That's a very out there question. But, you know, the concept of God's light, I don't know. Maybe I'm asking an abstract question, but does that idea resonate? Like,
absolutely.
Of light as an artist, yeah.
Absolutely.
And photography too, of course, Kevin. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've always kind of said, you know, at work and, you know, in my personal life, that the greatest light is God's light, and that's the sun.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we utilize the sun, that's the greatest form of, you know, lighting we can do. And, in my view, the second, you know, and third, fourth closest things are, you know, tungsten, carbon arc, and HMI. And although I don't necessarily apply Kabbalah to, like, you know, lighting and that, like, I'm like, oh, this is the crown or whatever. Like,
this scene is,
wow, this is some really just like, wow, Sephiroth vibes in this whole, you know, I don't think like that because I'm usually working, but like I do, you know, ponder that when I'm not doing something. But absolutely, I think that we should strive, you know, and I'm still young too, and I'm still learning more, and I want to apply those things to a greater extent, you know, greater thought of, you know, how can we apply, you know, esoteric ideas such as the Kabbalah.
Yeah. No, that's what you're writing about.
To what it is I'm immediately doing. So
that's cool. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Sure. Well, all right. Well, we'll go on like a little bit longer if that sounds.
That sounds great. Yeah.
But we'll, you know, move towards sort of wrapping up. What was I going to ask? Jeez. Oh yeah. So I was going to say, obviously, as we talked about, you know, none of us are from LA, and there's this whole question of like, are the vibes still here? You know, THRLL, you're from Chicago, right? Evan, you're from Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas.
How would you kind of compare? I guess you can each go. How would you compare and contrast?
Yeah, because we were just talking about Chicago. What I think of
Gotham City.
Yeah, I think Gotham City. But you know, Chicago does have a cred or a perception of it being like the most dangerous like city when like technically it's not, you know, compared to the stats. But I feel like the vibe in Chicago is still very like with the people. It's sort of grind oriented. I was telling him it's like you're a soldier in a way. Whatever, you know, your grind is, you know, your job is. It's sort of you're in it and it's real and you got to maneuver your way. And but when I come here, it's very mystical, which is a great feeling because I'm a mystical person, and I didn't really expect. I feel like I'm in the Shire. I always say, like the Hobbit Shire, because there's hills and the architecture.
Right now,
and the architecture of, you know, like the Philosophical Society of Research, like stuff like that. You don't see that in Chicago. Chicago, you know, you just get more. I don't really know how to describe it. Industrial, modern buildings.
Kind of similar,
But here definitely. But I do feel the energy here of like synchronicities happening and coincidences. Kind of right as I came to LA, and there is that dark energy. You know, of energy. Like you know, you guys are just at Spawn Ranch or whatever. There's like always this Manson, CIA kind of cult vibe looming. You know, what's going on at night? You know, with people. But that just adds to the fun of it. You know, that's cool. I think so. It's definitely more. LA is way more spiritually good. Good for me.
Sure.
You know.
I agree. Austin is the same way in that it lacks that kind of spiritual infrastructure, but we do have a lot of like crystal shops, stuff like that. There's
you said something interesting to me. There's like a lot of this stuff that's like kind of, this sounds silly almost, but like it's a lot of like kind of girly oriented stuff in a way.
Yeah.
You know, basic sort of astrology stuff in crystal shops.
Absolutely. And there is
we have that here, to be clear, but
Oh, absolutely. And there's one place in Austin called City Alchemist, which is kind of like quote unquote like a male oriented space.
Yeah.
And that's really great. I think that all of it's awesome, and I think that it all has its place. But here with the PRS, the Philosophical Research Society, that is the greatest extent I've seen to where it's kind of like a masculine kind of fort for men to come and just be like, like I believe in astrology, and like I'm a Libra rising. It's great because I feel more welcome. I feel more welcome there, and I'm not just at the crystal shop and everyone's like, "Damn, is this dude trying to pick up some crystal chicks or something like that?" Yeah. So I feel very welcome, and and in Austin, we do have a lot of people coming from LA to come and live, and I'm very certain that Austin will one day be a lot like Los Angeles in regards to its scale, and it'll have what we're talking about in the future, because it is kind of similar in regards to its environment, like the ecosystem. And because there's a giant river and there's hills in certain parts of Austin that are a lot like here, and you'll feel like you're surrounded by mountains. And it's beautiful. And coming to LA, I feel pretty at home considering how many people came from LA, and I'm kind of dealing with the same kinds of people, and I'm working on movies there, so they're coming from LA to come work with us. And so I'm very lucky to be here, and very lucky to come out, and everyone's been really nice to me.
Nice here.
It's a total lie. I think that that people are mean here. I'm sure I just haven't met them yet, but or maybe they left, or whoever these people are. But I feel like there's this there definitely is a tension between Texans and Californians regarding our different cultures.
Well, I guess politically, but I always say like it's less so sort of at like a street level or something. I don't know.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Kind of similar people than people would realize.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. I totally agree with that. Cool. But anyway, that's how I
asked first because I thought it was interesting what you said about it. I just think LA with Austin in some ways, I mean, this is almost negative, but Austin, I've never been to Austin, but I've heard it's almost like a satellite of LA at certain some of this culture.
Absolutely.
And therefore, maybe the roots don't go as deep, but hey, like LA obviously has a myriad of its own issues. It's really expensive. Austin's, less expensive. I think, as you said, like in time, Austin will kind of, as it kind of gain, I don't know, things kind of gain, things, as first things like crystals and astrology might be trends, but then they might gain more traction. I mean, I think that happened here, obviously. Some of this stuff was probably a trend in the 50s and 60s, but then someone like Manly P. Hall comes in, starts a Philosophic Research Center, it becomes a much more real thing. And it just gives it, if you give it time, things become more that way. But also I'm glad to hear that you kind of have this perception of the vibes still being here, the Hollywood vibes, I mean, it's sacred. Like that, it's a huge catalyst for American culture, and I wouldn't want it to not exist anymore, despite everything that's, that we talked about that's going on. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a kind of pointed question, but I'm really interested to hear what you say. This one's for Evan, but you have a meme on your, I guess, Instagram for ethics and film production of like your reading list, and one of the books you list as key to understanding Hollywood is Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. And I like that book too, and I'm definitely not disagreeing. I have my own thoughts on this, but why do you think Blood Meridian is one of the key books to understanding Hollywood? Yeah, I think that, the reason why I included that in my reading list is because in Blood Meridian, the main character, he's drifting between groups of people. And sometimes it's completely random, like especially with, spoilers. In the beginning, he ends up riding with his crew and they all get killed, and he ends up going with, another group, and then the group goes away, and then at the end of the film, he's the book. It's going to be a film soon. Apparently. They just announced that, I'll leave my opinion about that later if we get to it. But basically, like, I'm curious, that's how I feel about filmmaking. Like, you're constantly just going from one crew to another. And, you think you're going to roll with them for a while. Then all of a sudden you're rolling with this other crew, and you may never see them again. Dang, that's not what I thought you were going to say, but I like that answer. I thought you were going to say because it's about the opening and closing of the West, and Hollywood is this frontier of the West. I mean, there's something there too, right? I mean, and that's that answer maybe makes even more sense on a less pretentious ground. No, and I have another answer that has to do with that. So the judge is creating He's the dictator director, right?
Yeah, he is essentially that, and he's like, whatever exists, without my, if something exists without my permission, it doesn't exist.
That is what a director is supposed to, yeah.
And that's true, for a director. But when I, the reason why I put that there in my own words is that filmmaking is a lot like that in regards to with the democratization of filmmaking equipment and methods. There is no longer an objective methodology of lighting or how to do things. Now it's completely just, I own my own stuff. This is how we're going to do it. I never learned from, the greats, that lit this movie or whatever. I just happen to own this stuff, and this is how we're going to do it, and do it my way, or we can't work together anymore.
Yeah.
And
exactly how Judge Holden is.
Exactly. So that's why I added that in, as kind of a second point as to why Blood Meridian's important to understanding that this is how it is. Like, you really will be with one guy, and he thinks it's objectively correct to do it this way, and another guy will do it another way, and you kind of just... This is a really common saying. Whatever fucked up way you want to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of... I'll be working with people, and it's obvious that this is not the methodology that I learned. That's the objective method to do this, but we're doing it anyway because I don't want to piss them off, or they feel like I am doing this thing that is just my way. But what I'm trying to do is help your set do it this way to achieve the greatest possible product. Yeah. By giving you this methodology that will ultimately help you. And many people, as we kind of talked about, will view it as well, you're just inserting yourself into the methodology, when in actuality I'm presenting the method.
Yeah.
So
totally interesting.
That's why I included that book.
So wait, you're not as optimistic about the prospect of a film adaptation?
Oh, absolutely not.
Me neither. Yeah.
And because it's it's still just existing within the climate that we're already in. So The Road was really good. I loved that film. It was great, but that was
No Country is good too, but
No Country's good too.
I don't know. Those are almost made because Cormac McCarthy was into screenwriting for a bit. He almost I don't remember exactly. He wanted to screenwrite or something, but at some point his writing style changed to be more like screenwriting. Those books lend themselves. I think Blood Meridian should not be made into a movie. Pretty much. I will still see it, and I would love to be surprised that it's actually really good. But it's so interior, it's so poetic that it may not be a bad movie, but it's going to be such a far cry from the book. Have you read the book, Phil?
No, but it's been on my list forever. I love Cormac McCarthy, though.
And then also we need to remark about The Counselor. By Cormac, it's another film by Cormac McCarthy. I don't know if it was a book.
Oh, before, the film by Ridley. Is it Ridley Scott? Maybe
I believe so.
So did he write the screenplay?
I think he did.
Think he has actually,
but it was not
Sir Cameron Diaz fucks a car or some shit.
Yeah, that's it. She fucks the car. And granted, I didn't finish the film, but it was rated poorly, and the reason why it occurred like that is because maybe if you look at it, maybe if we look deeper into how it was made, it wasn't taken with the care of the Coen brothers, working with Roger Deakins to achieve something that they know will be very precise and honored, in honoring the original story. So that's how I think that Blood Meridian's going to turn out. I think it's going to be acceptable. I think it's going to be kind of Dune level, maybe good, maybe.
Yeah.
But
the current Dune would be about as much as they could aspire to. I like the current Dune, but it's not going to blow anyone away.
It's not going to be the blowing away that the blowing away that we
want.
Got from the book.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love the film or the book White Noise by Don DeLillo.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite books, and they made the movie last year, and I enjoyed the movie because I love the book. But it's one of those things where I think it's a good movie too, but I'm biased. I love the book. But where it's
a good of a great book is kind of a
different thing when it's okay, Blood Meridian could be a really good movie, but it won't be the same as the book just because it's a different medium, and it won't be as profound as the book and have that vibe. Watching White Noise, the dialogue is so profound and cunning and quick and witty, but also super intellectual. And when you're reading it, it's just awesome. And then it's just different when you're hearing it through like Adam Driver just say it, you know. It just really doesn't hit as hard. You know?
Then Noah Baumbach's direction, which is just inherently Wes Anderson-y. and then you know, from a just to add on from a technical aspect, it's just LEDs. Kind of deal. It's digital, and it's fine.
I didn't even see it, but I didn't. Yeah. I do still want to watch it. There's enough that I like going on with it, but like, no, I'm not expecting the world. Yeah.
As an auteur, Noah Baumbach, it's check it out. Like, Noah Baumbach's great.
No, he is.
And that's not to talk. And I hope everyone understands that I'm not talking shit about everyone who's just like lighting with LEDs. That's just simply that's just simply the standard right now, and we should just work towards changing that.
Totally. I mean, another, Evan, I want to bring this up too. I haven't seen this movie, but my doctor, of all people, I don't remember why. I think I told him that I was writing a screenplay or something, recommended this movie, The Player, directed by Robert Altman. I haven't seen it. I really want to, but you want to just give a quick thought on that? You listed as one of your...
Understanding Hollywood.
Yeah, so just...
Yeah, I mean, it's just essentially... Tim Robbins is a producer in Hollywood, and it's just a lot about... the filmmaking process, and he gets mixed up into a conundrum just involving, confidential things, and he has to kind of maneuver out of this situation, and it's very meta. Yeah. And I just felt that Tim Robbins was just the epitome of just who's kind of making films and how they really just kind of have no kind of artistic loyalty, cultural, a culturally pertinent understanding of what's occurring, and they're in the movie business, and this flashy thing, and that's what they're focusing on. It's not the art itself.
Yeah, you see the business side in that movie, because especially the great opening shot of that movie,
right,
where it's just like this long shot, and you're in like the studios, and you see like everybody from the stars walking to the offices to like Tim Robbins' character, and you just see him, like you just see these guys like pitching these script ideas to him, and he's like, okay, I like that was work.
Yeah,
there still is a creativity there in a way, but that's like the hustle of the business you get right there, where
exactly.
It's like
and like that one take you mentioned, that one take, it's essentially used in a mimetic way. It's like, oh, we're doing the long take shot. They even mentioned, I think, in the shot itself that like, why don't we add like an awesome like long take or whatever. Yeah. And like that's kind of how we can see, Phil and I were actually talking about this today, where it's like the concept of the montage in which you play like a cool song and it may be like in slow-mo or something, a la, Tarantino, whatever, and you're like, whoa, this is cool. Like they're playing Little Green Bag or whatever that song's called at the beginning of Reservoir Dogs. That in and of itself, that concept is passé. Like when you see that shot or that sequence where it's like, oh, we're playing the cool song and like it's super hits the beats of the editing or whatever, we're beyond that. Just like the one take, kind of. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you could do it well, and maybe the music thing too. But what immediately comes to mind when I see those things is just, I've seen this before. I understand it's cool, and I understand that maybe your average viewer is like, wow, this is like really cool, and it is cool. But it's also just kind of overused, and
it's kind of a fad now. That one take, it was a big fad that kind of happened in the past few years.
The Revenant, for example, is like coming off of Birdman from Inarritu.
Yeah,
you see that the one take thing has its limitations, and I remember seeing Birdman as a much younger person and saying like, wow, that was incredible. And then I'm rewatching it, and I can see the kind of technical evolution that we've had now to where I'm watching it and I can kind of see the inconsistencies. But especially in The Revenant, when that guy gets taken off the horse in the beginning battle, I can see the cut. Like I can see where they kind of melded the shots, and it just doesn't look, they needed to keep the energy going of the single take vibe, and it faltered and it took me out of it. And I think we need to cater more towards people. I know it sounds really like me, but someone who really has a technical eye, they should be able to fool me. And if they can't fool me, then it's not objectively good.
Well, people kind of lean into fads too much, and then in retrospect you can kind of see what they were doing. I think
so that was about The Player.
Definitely. I want to watch that movie. I haven't.
It's really good. I love Robert Altman.
Another movie that really captures that I would recommend people to understand Hollywood is, of course, Mulholland Drive.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of that scene where it's, this is the girl, sort of the behind the scenes thing. That's another element in a more sinister way, I guess.
Yeah,
been a while.
that really captures, like when I said the dark energy of LA, like that really does capture the sort of that scene and just the vibe of what we mean when we see the darker side of LA or of the industry, because it's kind of like Lynch's sort of imagination of like what it could be, choosing the girl, and it, you go all the way down the line who's choosing this girl, and it's like some deformed guy in a wheelchair in like this weird room, and you know what I mean, and
Anderson or whatever,
and
also in Twin Peaks,
and that's just the vibe of it, like
and weird, and what's going on, we don't know.
It's very sinister too.
Well, I was gonna bring up, you were gonna say something, Evan?
No, I was gonna say I need to go drive on Mulholland Drive once again. It's beautiful.
I do frequently living in the valley, but
nice.
No, the other thing about Lynch is we talked about sort of esoteric filmmakers. The interesting thing about him is that he, I think one of you said this, like another conversation we had about, like he's purely pure id. No, that's not right. But he's not
right. He's connected with his consciousness.
He's connected with his consciousness. He's not someone who's like intellectually analyzing what he's doing.
His true consciousness.
He brings in. He's like pure consciousness. He's bringing. Which makes sense as a meditator. He's bringing in these esoteric and sometimes intellectual or psychoanalytic ideas into his films without having any apparent awareness of it. Now, I think he may be more of aware of it than he lets on. I think that's some of his craft as an artist and as a public persona is not saying too much, no doubt. As you were saying earlier, vibe over words. Lynch seems to have that down pat. But it is interesting that so much in his movies, unlike Kenneth Ang or definitely unlike Jodorowsky, is like below the surface of what he's. It's not clear if he's exactly trying to do that. He probably is. But like he brings in a lot of stuff.
Especially like the owls in Twin Peaks. The owls are not what they seem. You wonder if that was one of the ideas that came to him, the big fish that came to him, using his analogy, or if he did have some esoteric knowledge when
definitely.
the owls in
he
there.
He talks about like kind of theosophical stuff a little bit, and like Tibet, and you never know how deep it goes. I know Mark Frost, who wrote Twin Peaks with Lynch, is maybe more openly into that stuff. So maybe that was the influence there. But nevertheless, Lynch is no doubt deeply connected.
What made me understand Lynch and the extent to which he knows is when in Twin Peaks, when the main detective, he starts, I think, throwing rocks or something, and they're trying to discern who to investigate.
The vibe, the Tao,
exactly, and that is a great demonstration of someone who understands filmmaking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was gonna say something else about Lynch. Also, you talk about that scene in Mulholland Drive where it's like, this is the girl. Politically, or sort of conspiracy theory, in a way pertaining to conspiracy theories, Lynch is also difficult to interpret. Like, what is he saying? He's very cryptic, but there's always this edge of like, is he presenting like some kind of conspiracy about what's really going on? But never, he doesn't explain too much. A really interesting. We were talking about Alex Jones earlier too. A really interesting. I don't know if you guys have heard this. It's very worth listening to. When David Lynch went on Alex Jones' show.
Holy shit!
Wow.
Look it up when you get.
Okay.
Wow.
That's sick.
He's talking about 9/11 truth.
Wow.
Okay, so a couple interesting things about this clip. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
One, it's interesting because David Lynch was like open to 9/11 trutherism. Like that's not something you hear every day in and of itself, but he was.
Yeah.
But what's even more interesting than just him acknowledging that is kind of the difference between Jones and Lynch. Alex Jones is very literal minded. He always wants to say exactly what's going on, even if he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm not trying to say that to hate on him like everyone else, but obviously he does just kind of say what's on his mind. He'll say he does this. He says like, I have a feeling about something, and then I just speak my mind. That's what Jones does. What Lynch does is he has a feeling about something, and then he remains very cryptic.
Yeah.
And what he says to Alex Jones about 9/11 is like, he says like, because Alex Jones wanted to have him on. A, was to promote Inland Empire, but also because he'd said something to the press about 9/11. And all Lynch to Jones was just like, listen, I don't want to say too much, but all I'm saying is like, there's certain things that don't seem to add up. But hey, when we start answering questions like that, like, we're opening Pandora's box. That's essentially what he said.
That's a great answer.
It's fantastic. Just hearing these two personalities come together and the way that they're similar but also very, very, very different is a real case study in something in psychology, and in the different ways one can be sort of mystical minded, or different ways of seeking the truth, I guess.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think Lynch's way right there is more like pointing out the questions that we should think about, you know, and really think of answering. And I think that's one of the biggest things is we need to find, you know, the right questions to ask and the right questions to think about. And Alex Jones is more, I have the answers to
Exactly.
Yeah.
the questions, you know.
That's the big difference. You know, even with regard to Lynch also talks a lot about, he keeps wanting to talk about meditation when he's talking to Alex Jones. So this clash of two very different worlds. But even when Alex Jones starts asking him some questions about Twin Peaks, it's similar. It's like Alex Jones is looking for the literal answer to what the owls are not what they see means, and Lynch is like, oh shucks, I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's super worth listening to. I think we're probably getting near the end here.
Yeah,
but is there?
I'll say something on that topic real quick.
Totally.
In regards to the writings, you know, my writings, I'm certainly not trying to take an ultra dogmatic approach to what it is I'm trying to explain, in that I'm always open to being proven wrong. This is just a lot of it's really just my observations as to what's occurring, and I think that's how we make progress is, you know, not going on, you know, a Tate mode, being like, this is how women are, like this is how like the hierarchy is, but you know, really seeking to find the answers and, you know, being ready to be proven wrong.
No, absolutely. I think that's a really, really great note to end on. Although, I mean, I was also going to just bring up a last question. If there's any other things you guys have been reading or watching you wanted to bring up, and it's fine if not. I just didn't want to. Any hot takes anyone has on anything?
Well, I really like Succession.
Me too. Yeah.
I love Succession. That might be the only show I'm really watching right now. I love I just love the character Mattson, played by Alexander Skarsgård. He's like this billionaire tech CEO, sort of Elon Musk figure. And Alexander Skarsgård might be one of my favorite actors. He plays him so well. And but this recent episode, I thought, this is just what I thought that was cool, is that they go to finalize this deal with Mattson and Waystar and you know, the main guy's company with the older people. They have a cultural test. They go to wherever they are, Switzerland or something, Norway, and they hang out with all of his guys, and it's just a matter of like who can hang, which is really like
vibe, right?
very who can vibe, and it's very frat boy vibes, you know, and they end up making the kill list of who gets fired because of, you know, who didn't really hang, I guess, or something like that, and that's just what the thing that I'm on right now. Succession, and then films. I rewatched Titan.
Nice, yeah.
Again, which I like, but I like Raw more. But yeah, that's just what
I
I'm
think
on.
I agree. Yeah, Raw was just a bit cooler. Although in the advertisement for Raw, it was like, oh, you're gonna see the most disgusting thing. You're gonna puke, and it's like, oh wow. So this is kind of like your typical kind of violent French film where it kind of explodes in violence, I suppose. Or there is some violence in the beginning, and then it gets progressively worse. Seen it before. Yeah. Like, did you see anything else, or are you reading anything? Or?
I just started to read The Alchemist, the novel.
Coelho,
Yeah. I mean, I just started it, and I'm really liking it. I love this idea of this boy who, because I relate in my own way, but like a boy who's given like sort of his dad like sort of went on his own path, and his dad got some wealth and maybe gave it down a little bit to his son. And he said, go on your own path. And that's just, I don't know, I think that's very archetypal and beautiful. You know, there's something about that story that
I've always
so far.
wanted to read it just based on the title. I don't know much about it.
Yeah, it's just, he's a shepherd. And right now he's just like, you know, he's going to go back to this town that he hasn't visited in a year to see this beautiful girl that he likes. It's a very mystical, archetypal story.
Yeah.
Nice. And then as for myself, just yesterday, I went to the Videotech rental store.
Yeah, in Pasadena, right?
Yeah, I wish we would have all gotten to go today, but it's all right. We'll all go
Do
again.
another time, yeah.
Totally. So I rented Heart of Darkness, which I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
And then I rented Holy Mountain, and which I tried watching last night on Blu-ray. I'm looking forward to seeing the commentary and the extras. That's always cool. And then one of my favorite guilty pleasures right now is watching Kitchen Nightmares on YouTube.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because I think it's great to kind of see how Gordon, kind of goes about trying to extrapolate exactly the issues that he can discern with the restaurant.
He's got to be an archetype, Gordon.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
some ancient archetypes.
And also, like, I watch it because I'm like, I really don't want to be like Gordon in the sense that because I just don't want to like be someone who's so anal. I mean, I do want to be like very precise, but I don't want to act just like that. As much as I respect him, I think we can kind of work better. It's theatrical. Like if you look at the British version of Kitchen Nightmares and you look at the American, it's much more I'm yelling and we're yelling, but I like the British version more, where it's just like, all right, we're really gonna sit down and like try to make this better.
And then you see him like do the ones with like the kids.
Oh,
you know, and he's like the sweetest person ever.
Yeah,
you want to chill with them, and
and that's awesome. And then book wise, I'm currently trying to get through Fanged Nomina right now,
Land, right?
and that's just personal research in regards to understanding the cultural climate of America, and it's very difficult to understand sometimes, and I am not as well read as I should be at understanding Kantian ethics, but I'm getting there, and if I can just kind of extrapolate the concepts that he's espousing, then I feel like I'll be a lot better off for it when I
actually have to read more Land. I know his ideas, but I have to read more.
Yeah, me too. I definitely need to just continue to try to understand him, and let's see. And then what else? We might go see The Covenant tonight. I think we're gonna go see The Covenant tonight. I'm really excited for Guy Ritchie. On my wall in my family home in Austin is Reservoir Dogs, Only God Forgives, Drive, and Lock, Stock.
Yeah.
And I know I got those posters when I was like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to be that kind of film bro, but that is what inspired me.
No,
totally, when I was young. So Guy Ritchie's a brilliant filmmaker, and I'm looking forward to seeing his take on. I think they're in Iraq or Afghanistan. So then what else? Just always trying to go to the New Beverly Cinema and catch film on film.
Definitely.
That's just one of my favorite experiences. And that's what I'm consuming right now.
And you just read Gothic Violence by Mike Ma, right?
Yes.
Which you had some mixed thoughts on.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was interesting, and I read your essay about that, Matt, and it was really I liked hearing your takes. Kind of about how if that were to happen, how it would go about, and the structuralizing of that environment. And I think that when we look at a post Kaczynski, political environment in which people are actually really taking to anarcho-primitivism.
Yeah.
Kind of what people are expecting. And at the same time, looking at the character himself, he's actually a very just rough guy. And he has problems with how he kind of views, women and women who abort.
Patrick Bateman thing.
Yeah, and that was interesting to kind of get inside the mind of someone who does think like that. And what they would want from their anarcho-primitive society, and it was really cool seeing how he felt about Atlantean technology.
Yeah,
that was really interesting because we're pretty privy to the lost technology, just like kind of how we saw in Atlantis: The Lost Empire, the film.
Yeah, and
I thought that was really profound to kind of see that in literature and applied on paper, and the aesthetics of how that me and THRLL, talk about how that has been kind of proliferating, this kind of gothic look, a la, the Donda performances and Playboy Cardi, and Drake's newest single where he was wearing like that black, and I got this from THRLL. THRLL helped me point out that.
That's cool.
Because I felt that
even some of the Travis Scott stuff.
Yeah, like Escape Plan and stuff, and even just the Astroworld performance where everyone has to go into the mouth, and there's that painting of I think it's hell or something, and it looks like that, and we'll have to see with new releases how that evolves, and if that kind of gothic ritual kind of thing continues to be prevalent in our culture, as well as
I think it will, because I think there's something that still feels intense and real
to
people about it. And Mike Ma, more so than being a great writer, like the design the Gothic violence look is very, very cool, you know?
Yeah, and I found it had a lot to do with my writing as well, because my writing, you know, in the filmmaker persona is more based in kind of ritualism.
Yeah.
And, you know, the esoteric application into, you know, things that you're doing, kind of everyday things, not every day, but on a film set. And there's a chapter called Renaissance of the Ritual. Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing in regards to, you know, people are adopting in America more pagan ideals as well as...
And more just ritual, like understanding the power of vibes that we're talking about, and like the powers of rituals and harvesting and harnessing that, I think, is what people are starting to understand more.
Yeah, and also in regards to the ritual of even just your morning and nightly skincare.
Yeah,
you know, that's even a ritual in of itself. Yeah,
again, Patrick Bateman, but still, you know.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's powerful.
That's what
I wrote about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and how about you, Matt, in regards to Gothic violence, like that you can remark on now?
With regard to Gothic violence?
Yeah, just anything, since I was talking about it so much.
No,
it was just a strange book. I just had never
read anything
like that.
I agree with a lot of what you say about it. Yeah, my essay on it's not so much about the book as about that chapter, Renaissance of the Ritual. For me, kind of coincided with the time when I was first getting into, I guess, I almost said Astroworld, esotericism. I'm taking a note here. And, you know, I don't really credit Mike Ma with that, but I do credit his first book, Harassment Architecture, is dedicated to Alex Kazemi, who's I don't know if you guys know who that is, friend of Chris's of the Meme Intelligence Agencies, and he wrote a book called Pop Magic. Used to be buddies with Marilyn Manson.
Oh, I've heard him on the MIA podcast.
Yeah.
Pop Magic.
Yeah.
Like
oh,
weed?
you'd love it. Yeah, I'd lend you the book, but I have it on Kindle. So you should get it. Yeah.
Wait, it's like pot, like marijuana?
No, pop. P-O-P.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
You said pot. My bad.
No,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of books on that too. But
I did read this book called Liber 420, and it was about.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Honestly, I couldn't really take it seriously because it was just like, just to briefly go over this, it was just like, I have information that they may have been using marijuana to do this thing. It's possible.
Well, Crowley definitely did sometimes.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's just some of it I just found
some
to be too loose.
Silly.
I found it like not enough, but yeah, I could believe it, but still.
Anyhow, my writing on Gothic violence is about Renaissance of the Ritual, and just kind of charting how I got into some of these esoteric concepts, which was largely through Alex Kazemi, who was friends with Mike Ma actually for a while.
I didn't know that.
It's kind of weird. I had an interview with him on this podcast, and people can listen to that. I mean, it's these, you know, lines of connection, but they're kind of synchronicities too, is the way I view it. But I was going to ask, like, maybe this is too big of a topic and maybe we should wrap it up, but I was kind of curious in a nutshell, like how each of you, and I think I've talked to both of you about it, but how you kind of came across, how you first started getting into esotericism.
Yeah, I feel like, well, I did have like sort of a quote unquote spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Or like a perceptive awakening. I took LSD one time during a music festival, and I sort of kind of had this huge thing of wisdom that I took from it, was that I was looking at this one girl far off. I was at a music festival, and I'm like, and I felt like I was standing awkwardly, right? You know, you're kind of tweaking. I'm smoking too, and I'm like, oh, this girl, is this girl that I know, right? And is she looking at me like judging that I look weird? But then I kind of off the LSD, I like somehow was talking to myself that like, no, dude, that's your perception of her perception. Yeah. So everything at its core is your perception.
Yeah.
And just sort of an unlocking sort of thing happened, and then I got like really into just philosophy. I was an existentialist, and then
no, me too.
And then COVID happened. I was like, that's why I'm an existentialist. And then you get into politics, or you read like capitalist realism and stuff, and then so just more like intellectually kind of got into it. And then stuff like meme analysis, I feel really put me onto, this is sort of what the occult is. I always thought the occult was like scary Pizzagate stuff, or like satanic stuff, but then I'm like, okay, so this is sort of what the occult and esoteric like knowledge is. And I started to learn about archetypes, and then I got into Jung pretty hard, learned into synchronicities and all that, and then just kind of went on from there, knowing like sort of that wisdom and like kind of just still experiencing life,
Nice.
So
and then for myself, when I was in I had a friend when I was young, and he was really into philosophy.
Yeah.
And I would roll with him and his friends in high school, and they would, always be talking about, just general. I remember I first heard the word Evola in ninth grade, and that's some pretty heavy shit to be kind of talking about.
Haven't gotten too in depth, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very, serious subject matter, but, point is that that's kind of who I was rolling with. They weren't, like, right-wing extremists or something like that. They were just interested in philosophy, and they enjoyed learning about all that kind of stuff, as well as, I was in philosophy club in high school, as well as...
I was a philosophy major, so philosophy is, like, one way to get into it, I feel like.
Absolutely.
It's like philosophy, and then when you want a little something more.
Absolutely. So I'd hang out with them, and they taught me stuff, and they shared with me their perspectives, and I also did speech and debate at MUN, so I was into politics. I did speech and debate for, I think it was 2 years, and then another year I was a president of my school's MUN team.
Nice.
And, we would go to tournaments and stuff, and then in my last year of high school, I was focused, strictly on film.
Yeah.
And I kind of came from a family as well, from my mother, who I remember doing one time I was sick, and she did kind of like a lemon, I'm half Hispanic, so she did kind of like a lemon ritual on me, and, looking back on it, that had a pretty profound effect on how I perceived what, life was, and, who my mother was.
Yeah.
And, from there, as I got older, I kind of, lost touch of that, all that kind of stuff, because I was focused on filmmaking. And, the pandemic rolled around, and, we're all shut inside, so I just took time to focus on myself and, learning new things. And, I, started with Tao Te Ching, and then eventually I came upon meme analysis.
Yeah.
And that was profound for me. Chris's writings and understandings of Jungian analysis and the occult and its application to memes, because it demonstrated to me that, you could be a guy, like I kind of talked about earlier, and like be interested in this kind of thing. Definitely. And it's not weird.
Yeah, that's one thing he's really good about is not that he makes everything about gender at all. Just, he unabashedly just kind of approaches it as a serious and impactful thing, something that requires a lot of grit too, which I think is appealing in a sort of more masculine way.
Exactly. So I was introduced to all these new thinkers like Jung and Crowley and various occult writers. So I started doing more research into that, and I got really into Jungian analysis. I've read quite a few books on the subject, and I think I'm pretty decent at understanding it. And then much later on, I got more into, understanding kind of the more esoteric stuff that Crowley would write about, like astrology, and then, more occult, more serious stuff, quote-unquote serious, like sigil magic and chaos magic and stuff. And I'm always just trying to read more books and further my understanding and, the nature of that. I'll have to say it's much easier to read than Kant. Oh my gosh.
I don't know. He's brilliant, right? But also, like...
Jeez.
I'm not always so sure about his ethics, and, like... I'd rather read the occult stuff. But anyway.
Yeah.
I'm
always trying to have a stronger base of those things, so...
Yeah. Nietzsche, better than Kant.
Yeah, Nietzsche
but both are worth reading. Both are absolutely worth reading.
And I can't believe I left out Nietzsche, and then, reading some of Nietzsche's works as well, I, came to understand, as one that, had a great impact on me was the genealogy of morals.
Of course. That's one of the key texts.
And
to understand where we are.
Absolutely. And, thus spoke Zarathustra.
Yep.
And, listening to various, essays online about his thoughts, and, it's had a huge impact on my writing. So, that's basically what's happened. I think that happened to a lot of people too, regarding the flux of witch talk and, such as that. And, we're just continuing to see those ideas proliferate, and that's how I came to understand those things.
Yeah, no, it's a good answer.
Thank you.
Well, hey, we'll wrap up in a second. I just have a couple lingering thoughts. I mean, Travis Scott came up a moment ago, and I was kind of interested to hear you guys' take on, like, did he kill those kids? I mean, I shouldn't say that. I guess that's
I know
What's that?
I know what you mean.
But I guess that's a bigger topic. But man, the whole Astro World thing, that was kind of a moment for me of realizing that some of this mimetic stuff, or like these dark forces perhaps could be applied on such a large level. But I mean, I guess we could do an in-depth analysis of Astro World, which again, it's like a abandoned theme park. and he used to say he wanted to like give kids the feeling of losing a theme park or something terrible. I don't know. It's another topic. I'm always tempted to get into it, but I guess it's kind of outside the purview of this conversation, unless either of you have burning thoughts on it.
No, I'll just say, like...
oh, and you're also from Texas.
I'm
so
also
yet
from
another
Texas.
connection.
I'll just say, like, really quick, you know, we're not going to go in depth into it. I'll just say, like, I think it was very odd that his single that dropped, along with, I think called Mafia, was Escape Plan.
No, it's weird stuff.
And then, like...
And he's a good musician. Like, I like him, to be clear. And I don't think he killed anyone, but I do think there's some weird manifestation.
And
shit going on.
Could have been a sacrifice to, like, you know, his image, you know, to continue that to some sort of force that we just don't know.
Yeah, or it could. I think more likely it's like unconscious, but like he was playing with that notion of fame and like just not caring and like. And sometimes, you know, that doesn't always result in bad things, but I think sometimes it does have a sort of bad mimetic or like total occult.
And his whole, like, the point, like, one of the biggest draws to, like, going to a Travis Scott, like, concert as, like, a fan and, like, being into that scene was always, like, his shows are the craziest. Like, you need to be careful at the shows that you don't, like, die in the mosh pits type thing. Like, his are the big ones. And so, like, when that happened, it's also like, oh, well, this is when it finally kind of happened in a bad way, you know, or like, like, you know, it proved itself to be a dangerous show for people to go to.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
But it's right. Like, there's so much weird symbolism and like weird things about it that it makes me, I always question, like, is it the unconscious universe sort of doing this? You know, like,
it's definitely a synchronicity.
Synchronicity. Yeah, which it definitely is. But is there any actual like evil on his part going on, dude? I don't know. I don't think he would want to do like.
Because it probably not ruined his career, but it was not good for him.
Oh yeah,
so
no.
Clearly, it got out of hand. But I do think he was. You know, there's something synchronous about kind of going that far in an egoic direction and then having a
playing with fire
damage
sort of thing.
There's a lot of kind of conflicting information that occurred when that happened. Like, oh, it looks like he's just watching them demonically die.
And then you see another,
not true. You see another angle, and he's actually trying to help him. And I'll just wrap up saying that, Travis Scott. I'll just wrap up saying. That it was really bad, and I'm sorry about that all happened, and I wish it didn't.
No, it's terrible. I don't know why. I just thought you guys might have an interesting take on it since it was coming up and this kind of part of that gothic aesthetic, and it's very much a Gen Z tragedy in a way.
It is.
I remember what I was going to say now. Basically, like, I think it's probably more likely than not that it wasn't meant to happen.
Yeah.
But just the fact that everyone kind of reacted in that way, or at least a large, you know, kind of population of people were like, whoa, that was really scary and weird. I think that was profound in and of itself.
It was.
I agree.
That, like, you know, we're all kind of aware that this kind of weird stuff is happening.
We're on that schizo.
And this was like during the pandemic, and it was still that.
So I think
totally. It's an interesting phenomenon for like multiple.
And I'm happy people are like aware to kind of think of things like that. Because what if that really was the case?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It shows we're more on our guard. But anyway, I'll wrap up in just a second here. I know I've said that a few times. There's no good note to end on. I think we kind of got our good ending thoughts out of the way like 20 minutes ago. Now we're just into bonus content. That's okay.
Yeah,
I mean, we're having such a great conversation.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And I'm really excited to get this up. But I did want to ask you, THRLL, about Joey. That's Joeyy. You went to his concert last week. You ran synchronously into Blair.
Yeah.
I knew some people who were going. I almost went. If we'd all met there, that would have been sick. I don't know him super well, but I am kind of just interested in your take on him. But also, to go back to something you said at the very top of this conversation, which is like how time, you know, the Gen Z thing and Gen Z versus Boomer thing, how like time seems to be kind of, the universe seems to be folding in on itself. It's interesting you said that because when I was listening to Joey the other day, after people were telling me like, oh, this was a good concert, I was thinking like, so I was like pretty into Lil Peep in like 2017, and I still like Lil Peep. And at the time, I was like, man, this is the cutting edge of rap music, like combining rock and it's combining emo and rap and like this very web SoundCloud based rap.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting to me now that we're 6 years past that and there's still kind of new SoundCloud rappers coming out who almost sound, it's still kind of similar to that, but like it's like folded back on itself at yet another level. So kind of just interested in your general thoughts on Joey, and also if that resonates. Like, for me, it's like, man, there's like time has lost all meaning. Like, there's just this steady stream of rappers where you can't tell if they're sincere or not, and they all have like the vocal tags. Yeah. And just general.
True. Well, first of all, I think probably like most of us, or that's probably why Blair was interested in him, because I discovered, like many of us, Joey through TikToks of how funny the DJ Smokey, who's been at it for a minute, his producer tags were just stuff like legalized nuclear bombs,
very funny, very
Shadow
dramatic.
Wizard Money Gang, don't look.
We love Catholic stuff.
And there's one that's like, don't look the shadow people in the eyes.
It's fantastic. You ever realize that those vocal, and people, that aside, but from back in the days of like Eminem, where he'd be like shady aftermath, like it's a thing that's been around for a while. But at some point, someone realized you could say the most random shit. Like the more outrageous it is, the better.
And now, as a side note, you can make it like any person. You can make Walter White saying some shit, Joe Biden saying some shit. But and also Joey himself, he's a very memeable person. He's dripped out always, and he has funny memes online of him.
He worked with Sam Hyde, I believe.
And he was chilling with Sam Hyde and stuff. So that's how I got into his music. That's a funny meme, but like a lot of music, and especially with this new SoundCloud rap scene, sort of like the meme ends up becoming, it's like layers of irony, where it's like post-ironic, where you listen to it ironically, but you think it's really good and you like it. And I think especially DJ Smokey's production is like, and the other production when he's not doing DJ Smokey stuff is really dope. And his whole aesthetic of Shed Gang, the sort of group of people that he's with, it's very much like outside in the woods sort of vibe, other than what's going on now in the scene, which is what we said with this gothic, you're in the city at night sort of vibe. So I was like, I feel like this is maybe the next creative direction that's like up next,
I think Blair said as much in his recap.
I definitely think, especially Shed Gang's vision, like the look of everything, that's might be an up next wave. And the music is good, and it's good. It's interesting. It's not like generic rap or trap music these days. But what was the other part of the question?
Oh, it's kind of abstract, but I mean, I think that you almost answered it with that. Just the way, it's not generic rap or trap. It's this new thing that's also a repackaging of old things. Yeah, for me, that kind of is evocative of this new Aquarian way of cultural progress. One could be very cynical about it and say, it's all like web trash, but I think there is something to it, and I think it's this. There is a progress, but it's a weird. It makes me feel old on some level, but at the same time, it's good to see that the things keep folding back on each other, and there's still new mimetic. There's still novelty.
I think, sure. And I think, especially with Joey, really helped me be like. Gave me more hope, like as in Joey gave me hope, that there is novelty in the future that
because the pandemic was so. I think some of this is, and Blair even talks about this on his video on Joey. Like there was things got so stagnant during the pandemic, and now we're just getting out again. We're just getting up in real life again, and there's some music to go along with it, I guess.
And you think of stuff like in capitalist realism, I think Mark Fisher talks about, where it's like, we're just recycling the same old stuff now, like. Guardians of the Galaxy is just a recycle of like 80s nostalgia.
You know what I mean? Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is coming out, which itself is relying on some nostalgia from 7 years ago.
And everything is it's like there's no new ideas. Like, the idea that 90s was like grunge, and that was the last sort of like pure wave of music that's new, and now everything's gonna be recycled. But no, I think especially with the internet and Gen Z, like. Everything is going to be inspired by something. So, but like I believe, there's going to be even more novelty, hopefully. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's a funny note to end on, but I think that about wraps up. Thank you guys so much. I think this was awesome, and I'm excited to get it up.
I had a great time. Thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure. And, for the audience, I haven't listened to Joey, so I'm going to go listen to Joey.
Hell yeah.
I might listen on my drive home.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome. Cutting.